Hi everyone, I'm Sharon Palmer, your host of Genetics Decoded. Please note that the information that we're presenting to you today is not to be taken as medical advice, but is for general information only. What we're going to look at today is oxidative stress. You really need to think outside of the box here. I know most of you have probably heard about oxidative stress. You're probably taking some supplements to deal with oxidative stress, but I may surprise you in that the things that you're doing may not be effective at all. We're going to look at how the body produces these free radicals that cause oxidative stress. We're going to go right down to the level of the mitochondria, which you might have heard of when you were doing your high school biology, but this is where you're making a lot of your free radicals. This is where your antioxidant and enzymes are embedded. But we're going to have a really good look at what is oxidative stress and how are you going to effectively deal with it, because if you can get this right, it's going to make a really big difference to your health. You need to look at your genetics, so let's go. Today we're going to be looking at antioxidants, and I know you've probably all heard of that word. You may be doing lots of things from a supplement point of view or a protocol point of view trying to deal with antioxidants. I want you to realise that it is far more than just taking some vitamin C and thinking that the job is done. There is so much marketing hype around antioxidants. There's a lot of companies touting a lot of products that if you just take them, you're going to solve all of your problems. We're told to eat certain fruits and veggies because they have all of these antioxidants in them, or we've even assigned these things called ORAC values, ORAC, which is like if it's got a high ORAC value, then it's got a lot of antioxidants and you should be eating it. We need a lot more clarity around what oxidative stress is and how do we effectively deal with oxidative stress. When we look at this process of oxidative stress, it is really important that we get it right. This process sits behind all diseases. It's one of the reasons that we age, and it's the reason that we get sick. So you want to go in and be very effective at controlling oxidative stress. It's not going to be done through swallowing a couple of antioxidant supplements or focusing on your fruit and veggies. The way that you really need to look at this is to go into your genetics. We need to go in and look at how our primary antioxidant system is working, and if it is not working in our favour, we need to do things to upregulate it. If you don't get this primary antioxidant system working, you will not be effective at dealing with oxidative stress. And what we're going to do today is really look at the genetics behind oxidative stress, look at these primary antioxidants, and look at what causes oxidative stress. How do we go in and effectively deal with it? The first question you should be asking is, what is oxidative stress? I ask all of my patients that when I'm delivering their antioxidant report, and most people just give me this blank stare like, oh, I think I know, but if I have to tell you, I've really got no idea. Or what they do is they hear the word stress in there and they think, oh, that's because I'm really stressed, or all of my lifestyle choices, the fact that I'm really busy, that I'm not sleeping well, this is the stress that we're talking about. And that's not what oxidative stress is. If we try and define oxidative stress, it really is basically an imbalance. It means that you are producing too many free radicals, that you've produced more than you have that you can get rid of. These free radicals are officially called reactive oxygen species, and you'll often see them abbreviated in research papers as ROS. Free radicals cause oxidative stress. Now that we know what oxidative stress is, your next question really should be, how do we make these free radicals? Like, why are we under oxidative stress? And that's a really, really good question, because every single one of you is producing these free radicals every single day. It is just a function of being alive. It is a function of breathing, of producing energy, of having your immune system working. There is no way that you cannot produce any of these free radicals. Now, these free radicals have the capacity to do a lot of damage to the body, and your body has to remove them. If you produce too many and you can't remove them, what you will have is your oxidative stress levels are going to begin to increase. And when you get too many of these free radicals in the body, then your oxidative stress levels are going to be too high, and that's going to lead to a lot of issues around your health. The main area in your body in which you're going to produce these free radicals are things called your mitochondria. Some of you may have heard of that. So your mitochondria are these tiny little, I guess almost like batteries. They're the drivers, all of your energy production within the cell. So you have these mitochondria embedded in your cells, and their role is to produce your cellular energy. The whole point of you eating food is to be able to turn it into energy, into ATP energy that drives all of your cellular processes. So your mitochondria are busy producing this energy. The byproducts, the waste products of this energy production are these things called free radicals. The tissues in your body that work the hardest are going to produce more of these free radicals. So places like your liver, your kidneys, your brain, your muscles, they have high levels of these mitochondria. They're consuming a lot of oxygen, and therefore they're making a lot of free radicals. It's estimated that about 2 to 5% of all of the oxygen that comes into your body ends up as free radicals. So that's quite a lot. You're making a lot of these free radicals every single day. It's not just through the processes of living and breathing and moving that you will produce these free radicals. There's a lot of environmental factors that can also increase your oxidative stress. So for all of you smokers out there, it's really bad news. Your levels of oxidative stress are going to be really high. For all of you out there drinking alcohol, same thing. You're going to have high levels of oxidative stress. That's one of the reasons that these kind of habits are really bad for our health, is they push this oxidative stress very, very high in the body. If you're inflamed, especially if you're chronically inflamed, you're going to end up with a lot of free radical production. People who are having all of those aches and pains or getting colds and flus, and there's this strong inflammatory process, inflammation drives oxidative stress. The problem is oxidative stress also drives inflammation. So you can get locked into these cycles. This is why it's so important to go in and get these things working, because when they're not working, they can have this domino effect, and one thing leads to another. If you live in a really polluted environment, so there's a lot of smog, there's a lot of chemicals around you, that will also push up oxidative stress. Go out into the sun and the UV rays will trigger oxidative stress. So there's lots of things that can push that up besides your own bodily functions. And there's a range of health conditions that are also associated with really high oxidative stress. So for any of you who have been diagnosed as being diabetic, your oxidative stress levels are high. In fact, when you look at the risk factors around having diabetes, which is often you see blindness because the eyes, the retina is being damaged. You can end up with a lot of cardiovascular disease and a lot of kidney disease. The underlying process that is leading to these risk factors is oxidative stress. So if you're diabetic, or even if you've been diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, maybe you're not a full confirmed diabetic at this point, but things like your glucose and insulin levels are raised, you really want to bring them down, because if you don't, you're just going to keep driving this oxidative stress through the body. We also know that people who have too much iron in their blood, often called hemochromatosis, so There's a lot of genetics behind that, and we'll be doing a podcast in the future that will go in and really look at iron storage and metabolism in the body. But some people have genetic risk factors in which they store too much iron in the tissues. And what iron does is it triggers oxidative stress. If you've ever seen iron in the environment, you see that it rusts. That is exactly the same process that's happening in the body. If you cut an apple and it turns brown, that is oxidative stress. So sometimes we've seen these things in nature and we go, oh, we just really don't know what that process is. But that process is happening in the body. And that oxidative stress, those free radicals, are damaging everything. They're damaging the proteins, they're damaging your fats, your cell membrane, and they even go in and they damage the mitochondria. There can be genetic risks around increasing oxidative stress, there can be environmental factors, and then there can be health issues that will all drive that. It doesn't really matter what is driving that oxidative stress. What is really important is that we have to go in and we have to effectively get rid of these free radicals out of the body. Let's have a look at how much of a problem these free radicals are. If I asked you, how many would you make a day, you've probably got no idea. Researchers have gone in and they've estimated that every cell in your body will receive about 10,000 hits per day from these free radicals. That's a lot of hits. You also have a lot of cells in the body. So the average adult male has 36 trillion cells, and these 36 trillion cells are getting hit by these free radicals 10,000 times a day. It is a major process that is happening in the body. You can't not produce these free radicals, so you've got to be very effective at getting rid of them out of the body. If we know that these free radicals are causing so much damage, what we've got to focus in on is the pathways and the mechanisms by which we remove them. Your body is smart. It knows, well, if I'm going to be alive and breathing, I'm going to be making free radicals. These free radicals can severely damage my body. What I need to do is I need to clear them out of the way. And you have what is called your primary antioxidant system. There are 3 key enzymes as part of this system. The first one is called superoxidized dismutase, often abbreviated as SOD. Then you've got something called glutathione peroxidase, abbreviated as GPX1, and then you have something called catalase, abbreviated as CAT. So there's these 3 primary antioxidants, and they are designed to get rid of your free radicals, and they do a very, very effective job. If you have a look, and we spoke about the tissues and the organs that are working the hardest, you have these primary antioxidants embedded within the tissues themselves and within the organs themselves. And the organs and the tissues that are working the hardest will have the highest levels of these antioxidant enzymes buried directly within them. When we hear about antioxidants in the marketplace, people have been really focused on things like vitamin C and vitamin E. We hear a lot more about things like glutathione and coenzyme Q10, but it's important to know that these are all secondary antioxidants. They are not doing the same role as your primary antioxidants, and they are certainly not as effective as your primary antioxidants. If you're just trying to control oxidative stress through these secondary antioxidants, you are not going to be effective. If we look at the difference between primary and secondary antioxidants, it's really as different as night and day. Let's take vitamin C, for example. If you've got 1 molecule of vitamin C, it has the capacity to quench 1 free radical. When you're making millions and billions of these free radicals, quenching 1 at a time is very, very slow. Also, these secondary antioxidants, as they're doing their job and quenching these free radicals, they kind of become exhausted, and you've got to keep replenishing them and putting them back into the system. Your primary antioxidant system works completely differently. These primary antioxidants are going to be quenching millions of free radicals per second, not one-to-one, but millions per second. And this is why you have to focus on getting your primary antioxidant system working, because it's through that system that you're actually going to quench and remove these free radicals from the body. We're going to examine how these antioxidants work through the body. We know that if we breathe and we move, if we live in a polluted environment, we're going to have these free radicals, and your body's got to get rid of them. It does it in 2 steps. So the very first step is your superoxidized dismutase. It begins by transferring it. It takes your free radicals and it turns it into something called hydrogen peroxide. And a lot of you have probably heard of hydrogen peroxide. That first step doesn't really solve too many of your problems. Hydrogen peroxide is also not good in the body, but that is the very first step. And it is really important that this superoxidized dismutase works for you. If it's not working very well, you can't even really go in and start this production or this clearance around your free radicals. Once your step 1 has taken place and you've produced something called hydrogen peroxide, your other 2 antioxidant enzymes are going to come in. So your glutathione peroxidase and your catalase are going to take that hydrogen peroxide and they're going to convert it into water and oxygen. And it's quite a remarkable process in the body. You take these free radicals that can really damage your body, damage so many tissues, damage down to the level of your DNA, and sometimes that damage can't be repaired. And what they do is they turn it into water and oxygen. An amazing process. Your body does that day in and day out as long as those antioxidants are working for you. I want to go back in and have a little bit more of an in-depth look around your mitochondria and the free radicals that are produced by your mitochondria as they work and make energy on your behalf. If we look at your mitochondria, it's important that it produces energy. That energy is going to drive everything that happens in your body. The more effectively your mitochondria work, the better your energy production. If your mitochondria start to not work very effectively, your production of energy is going to begin to drop. But the less effectively your mitochondria work, the more free radicals they produce. So they produce free radicals no matter what, but if they're not working very effectively, they're going to produce even more of these free radicals. As your free radicals build up within your mitochondria, they cause the mitochondria to work less effectively, and then they produce more free radicals. So you tend to go round and round in circles. This oxidative stress keeps building up in the mitochondria make less energy. Now, that may show up for you clinically in that you're just not feeling very energetic. I always say to people who've got problems around chronic fatigue, you've got to go in and look at your mitochondrial function. You've got to really find out whether you've got this ability to clear these free radicals from the mitochondria, because what will happen is your mitochondrial function will drop, and at some point your body goes, my mitochondria are rubbish. They're not doing a very good job. Let me kind of get rid of them and let's start again and make some new ones. But making your mitochondria is very energy intensive. If you haven't solved the reason that they were destroyed in the first place, they just accumulate more and more of these free radicals, and you keep going through this process. So any of you with chronic fatigue, waking up and thinking, I've tried all of these things and my energy is not getting better, focus on oxidative stress and really focus on this superoxidized dismutase enzyme, because it is embedded right within the mitochondria. So your body says, I'm going to make all of these free radicals as I'm making energy, and I'm going to put this enzyme right there, and as you make these free radicals, they're going to be removed out of the system. This is how the system works and keeps functioning, is that when your heart works and it produces all of these free radicals, your enzyme called catalase is at high levels in your cardiac tissue, and what's it doing? It's removing these free radicals so that they don't build up and the organ and the tissue can continue to function. One of the other areas that you want to be thinking about around mitochondria and energy production, this is for you men, this has got to do with the activity of your sperm. So men who have got any issues around infertility, or maybe you've even done a sperm analysis and you've been told that your motility levels are really poor. So that means that they're just not moving across, they're not moving very, very quickly. If you look at a sperm, it's very, very tiny. In order to get that small, the sperm has divested itself of a lot of protection and it's lost a lot of its antioxidant protection. And so the sperm is particularly vulnerable to oxidative stress. So again, for men going into having children or there's fertility issues, think about looking at this pathway, looking at mitochondrial function as well. What I see a lot when I see men at a clinic level where there's fertility issues, one of the things I'm always asking them is, have you been diagnosed with hemochromatosis, which we just spoke around, which is too much iron? And iron can be deposited into the sperm and it pushes oxidative stress really, really high. So you've kind of got to start to look across a range of areas, but having one condition can just put you at risk of something else. You want to have a rational approach to going in and looking at how these things can impact on one another. Now that we've established what causes oxidative stress and that it's your own primary antioxidant system that is going to protect you here, how do you go in and find out whether this system is working for you or not? And if you do genetic screening, it's really easy. You will find that almost all companies that are putting genetic panels into the marketplace, they will report on the genes around oxidative stress. Almost all of them will look at particular variances in superoxide dismutase, in glutathione peroxidase and catalase. You don't want to just look at one or the other, you want to look at all three. And it's quite common to see real variances across all of that. So when I go in and screen this for patients, sometimes I have patients where they've got genetic risk factors across the whole panel. Not one single one of those enzymes is working very effectively. In other people, there's no issues at all. And you can have any combination of that. The more of those primary antioxidants that are not working effectively for you, the greater your risk of oxidative stress. But your genetics will allow you to very clearly go in and see if that system is working. Because what the research is showing us is that when there's particular variances in these genes, that the enzyme is either not producing enough of these antioxidant enzymes, or the enzymes that are being produced are just working very ineffectively. By looking at your genetics, you're going to know whether that system is working. And then what you've got to do is you've got to go in and you've got to make that system work better. And this is where, when we're looking at oxidative stress and how to deal with it from a genetic perspective, it is going to be completely different to how people have been doing it up until now. Because up until now, we're thinking, oh, I've just got to take an antioxidant supplement, or I've got to eat some antioxidant foods, and that's going to help me. That is not the way we're going to do it. What we have to do is work through the level of gene expression. We need to do things that help to upregulate that gene, help to produce more of the enzyme and to have that enzyme work more effectively. And things like your vitamin C are not going to be working through those pathways. So you can't think, oh, well, I'll do this and it's just going to work at the level of gene expression. We've got to be focusing now on what we call nutrigenomic interventions, supplements and compounds that you're taking not because they're antioxidants in and of themselves, but because they have this capacity at the level of gene expression to turn things on and make things work better. Because if you can make more of your antioxidant enzymes and you can make them work more effectively, then you're going to control oxidative stress. It would be really good to be able to quantify the amount of oxidative stress in the body, and that is possible. It's just not possible through the current pathology market. If you went to your GP tomorrow and you said, "Oh, I'm concerned that I'm under high oxidative stress, can you please do a test and tell me?" You're just not going to get that kind of information. Through functional and specialised testing, it is possible to go in and look at the amount of damage that's been done. You can look at the amount of damage that's been done to the cell membrane and to some of the fats in your body, and even down to how much damage has been done to the DNA. But they're not routine tests. There'll be a lot of practitioners who won't even have heard of them, and they can also be quite expensive as well. One of those tests on their own could cost you, somewhere between $80 and $100. It is possible to do that. One of the ones that I've tracked a lot at a clinic level is a DNA oxidative damage marker. It's called 8-OHDG, and there's some specialised laboratories that will enable you to order that test. And I spent a lot of years tracking this 8-OHDG. So I would get my patients' genetic data. I would look at the genetics around these primary antioxidants, and then we would measure the amount of damage that had been done to the DNA through this marker. We would then put patients on a nutrigenomic intervention, something that would work through upregulating the gene, the expression and the activity of that enzyme. And then we would go back in over time and we would track this 8-OHDG marker. And I could see how effective you could be at bringing down that oxidative stress. But I also remember having a patient referred to me. She had a lot of really significant health issues. We ended up doing her DNA, but when I got her to outline to me all the products that she was taking, the list was extensive. She was on more than 15 individual supplements, which is a lot for people to take. It's very expensive and it's also very cumbersome, but there were quite a number of those products that she had been prescribed as antioxidants. It would have it on a list. You're going to take this, it's an antioxidant in the body. When we went in and looked at her 8-OHDG DNA oxidative damage marker, her levels were the highest I had ever seen. We've got someone who's being really proactive around her health, who is taking a mountain of supplements, all supposedly with some antioxidant impact. But when we're going in and measuring the amount of damage that's been done to her DNA, it is through the roof. And this is why you've got to be so kind of discerning when you're in the marketplace. Don't think that because you're taking a whole bunch of supplements and you've been told that they're good antioxidants, that they're doing anything for you. If they're not actively working through this primary antioxidant system, they're probably not going to be very effective. But, what I saw with this patient is that we had her genetics, we put her on these nutrigenomic interventions, and we really did see over time that oxidative damage marker can drop. The take home here for that is that if you get it right, you can be very effective at getting oxidative stress decreased, or you could be doing a whole lot of things and going absolutely nowhere. And this is the whole thing around this podcast really, is trying to get you to end up making decisions and doing things that deliver outcomes. Because if you can effectively deal with oxidative stress, the impact on your health, both short-term and long-term, will be really significant. But if you aren't effective, then you're just not going to get any benefits from the things that you're doing. What we will see is as genetics becomes more mainstream, we're going to see a shift in pathology as well. So right now, a lot of the pathology labs have have really been developed around the Medicare rebate system, around looking at certain tests, which on the whole can give you some insight, but tend to be superficial. Sometimes you really want to go in and look. And right now, a lot of that pathology testing isn't very relevant or well correlated to looking at genetics, but that will change, and hopefully it will change sooner than later. The word to start to listen for is something called proteomics. So proteomics is going to allow us to measure the change in gene expression. This is kind of what the future will look like, is you'll get your DNA done, you'll go, I want to see how well my primary antioxidant system works. You'll look at your genetics, you might find, it's not working very well at all. You won't have waited until you're 60 or 70 to be diagnosed with a disease. You can look really, really early. You can go, this primary antioxidant system is not working. You could then use your pathology, you'll use proteomics, and you'll go, how much of my antioxidant enzymes am I producing and how well are they working? So you can see that you've got a genetic risk. You can quantify that with proteomics. Then you would take a nutrigenomic intervention that would upregulate the production and the activity of these enzymes. And you wouldn't go, I just hope that's worked. Cross my fingers. You would at some point go back in and using proteomics, you would go, have I made more of the enzyme and is the enzyme working more effectively? And you will be able to do that. So you will take away the guesswork. You will be able to be very targeted with what you're doing, but you'll also be able to really track that your interventions are working. Because if you've been successful in making more of those antioxidant enzymes and they're working well, then you're going to be able to control oxidative stress. And that will be really, really significant from a health point of view. I hope you learnt something from this podcast today. This process of oxidative stress is so important. If you're looking at improving your health, trying to manage a particular health condition, or you just want to age healthily, you've got to understand this process of oxidative stress. You've got to come back in at a genetic level and figure out what's happening. If you're trying to do this through things like your vitamin C and your vitamin E, they're not going to be overly effective. You've got to be careful with your C and E. People are mega dosing out there. They read that it's a good antioxidant. They take these really high levels. But the research is showing that you may end up with adverse outcomes. The problem with vitamin C, it can become a pro-oxidant as it's working. So you're taking it thinking it's going to give you this great antioxidant protection. It could actually be leading to increasing your oxidative stress. We saw where some researchers used vitamin E. They were giving it to patients with lung cancer. They actually had to stop that study because the patients receiving the vitamin E were ending up with worse outcomes. Don't kind of be drawn to these supplements to think that you're going to solve oxidative stress. They may not be working in the way that you think. They may be doing you some harm. There are some values in looking at your fruit and veggies. There's flavonoids and polyphenols that can have the capacity to work at the level of gene expression. So there's benefits in still choosing, fruits and veggies, but they may be working through different mechanisms. But the main thing is get your intervention right because you want to end up with good outcomes here. Thank you so much for listening to Genetics Decoded. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe, like and share. Tell your friends all about what we're doing because we truly are individuals. Your genetic data can be used for you to make much better decisions around your diet, supplements and lifestyle. Join me each week to find out how.